Hey there, Kenneth French of Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. We're very, very happy you stopped by. Either you're going to watch this or listen to this because you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably an entrepreneur who's either just starting out or you've been around for quite a while and you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably a real estate investor, maybe even a real estate agent, maybe a professional or of some sort, professional advisor of some sort. And well, you are stopping by because you need some valuable advice from one of the top industry leaders there is. Anyway, thank you very much. Once again, Kenneth French, Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Really glad you stopped by. Globally, we're more interconnected than ever. And luckily, we're hanging out with Daniel Nikic, who's going to help us to learn some elements to make more money in your portfolio based on his knowledge of the global markets. What's going on, Daniel?
Hey, thanks for having me, Kenner. It's going quite well. How are you doing today?
I'm loving it life, mainly because you're going to help add value to the listeners and viewers who probably do need some global investment expertise that you provide. So let's get right to it. Why invest globally when, who knows, maybe we have investment opportunities here in the United States?
Well, I'll look at it this way. There's globalization. We're all connected. We like it or not. I think the greatest example was during Corona, when we saw with a lot of stores getting shut down, the shipping industry. A lot of stuff are manufactured in China, Malaysia, Indonesia, and we're impacted that way. And furthermore, we're impacted also in terms of commodities, trade, and if you like it or not, even innovation. When you think of it, there's some pretty notable companies that came from outside of the States that moved to the States. For example, I would say Grammarly. The founders were from Ukraine. So there's several examples like that. And we see a lot of, just look at population, demographics. There's 1.2 billion people in China. There's 1.4 billion people in India. That's a huge market right there. And America has a huge, in my perspective, being that I'm born in Canada, I live in Croatia, America has a huge influence on the business world. Just look at the banking industry. Look at the big companies, NVIDIA, Facebook. They're all based in the States. Amazon, Apple. Apple is like the new McDonald's in a way. When you think of, you go anywhere in the world, they know what McDonald's and Coca-Cola is. You can go Africa, you can go to Bosnia, Herzegovina, anywhere. They all know about it.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I think for asset allocation purposes, which is the distribution between, asset classes, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, international, locally in the US, et cetera. I think it makes sense to diversify away from United States to a certain extent. I'm not a big advocate of global funds per se, but I'm a big advocate of international funds, unless someone's really advanced and they can strip apart the, for their asset allocation, the global funds in the US and, international. I think it makes a lot of sense then. But I think international funds or assets make a lot of sense in a portfolio because it helps you with your, I won't get too technical here, but standard deviation, et cetera, of an overall portfolio and brings down your risk because you're diversifying. I think it makes a lot of sense. That's the reason I'm really excited to have you on the show. So let me ask a few questions. Actually, why don't we get in your background, because you have a good background. Why don't we go into your background and then we could delve into a lot more stuff, because I do have a bunch of questions for you.
All right, perfect. So I'm born and raised in Canada, near Toronto. And once I finished university, I moved to Croatia. So this is in 2009. And I would say I was 21 years old. So usually when you're young, you're more willing to take risks in a way. And you don't think about, how can I say, you don't have too much concerns about like if the country's as economic prosperous and et cetera. You're just like, hey, you know what? I'm young, take advantage of it. And I think it's good at that age because you don't have as many responsibilities for most cases, depending on the person's situation. And then I moved to Croatia in 2009. My parents are Croats from Bosnia and Herzegovina, so I was somewhat connected to the country. And when I went to Croatia, I worked for a local consulting firm. So I always did market research and financial analysis. And I did it working also in commercial real estate throughout Central Eastern Europe, from Poland all the way down to Serbia, looking at projects, doing primary and secondary research, and doing financial models, so all the fun stuff. And then I established my company Chorus, which stands for Coherent Research, because I was focused more on the market in North America and Western Europe. And not to sound arrogant, but since my first language is English, why not take advantage of it? It's the business language of the world. We like it or not, you can go to Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia, wherever. If you speak English, there's a good chance you could do some business there. In my opinion, obviously you have to understand the social cultural factors. Maybe have a local partner to help you, but it's a huge advantage in today's world.
Mhm.
And then I did some market research and financial analysis for a few entrepreneurs, and then I got involved into the investment world specifically when I did research on family offices. That blew my mind. Then I'm like, this
Mhm.
is where I see these wealthy, high net worth individuals invest their monies. Then you see like they have a family office, then they break it down, accounting or a legal company. They might have a real estate investment firm or a VC fund, and you just see how the money goes around. And I wanted to follow the trends, and especially working with AI.
Mhm. Got it. Yeah, you have a good background. You're a little modest. You have a big time background helping a bunch of funds and family offices, et cetera. But so let's delve into a couple things. Before I forget, let's say someone's interested in learning about your services or engaging you for your services. How does someone get a hold of you, by the way?
I have a personal website, danielnikic.com, where sometimes I write blogs, but you can get my contact information there and also on LinkedIn. I'm quite responsive on LinkedIn
Got it.
too.
How do you spell that website? How do you spell that
Daniel,
website?
yep, Daniel, N as in Nashville, IKIC.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Just remind everyone, Daniel's not getting paid for this. We're just here to add value. If you connect with him, great. I'm not getting paid for this. We're here to add value to entrepreneurs who are listening and watching this. So hopefully they can, make more money and retire in the way they want. So, all right, I'm going to ask you some more questions about just the overall international theme as it relates to investments. Some people would say, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Some people would say, well, international investing is a little scary because you never know what's going to happen because, there's some there's companies that are international that you can't touch and feel as if they're in the United States, as an example. Again, I'm just throwing this out, playing
Yeah.
devil's advocate. What are your thoughts to that argument?
It's a good point. I would also say that you should always, I think it's good to travel around the world. You'd be surprised what you learn and stuff. And I know a lot of people like to be comfortable where they invest in stuff, but sometimes you have to take risks. If you look at one of the greatest entrepreneurs, it could be from Henry Ford, it could be from Steve Jobs, and etc. They all took a huge risk in order to succeed. And my opinion, I think North America, and that includes the States, has changed quite a bit, like it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, if you wanted to do business, it was just the States pretty much. But you look at China.
Mm-hmm.
Singapore's always been pretty big international hub in my estimate. Look at UAE. I've been in Dubai a couple of times. Saudi Arabia. I'll take an example. I was talking to this one individual, and they are dealing with the real estate market. When they told me how much
Mm-hmm.
prices have gone up for land, wow! And we all know with the recent couple of visits from politicians coming from the States to Saudi Arabia and Middle East, there's there's risk wherever you invest. There's nothing secure. I think we have to be realistic. We've seen in the
Mm-hmm.
past some companies that seem very successful and they went downhill. Look at Enron, or you can also look at what happened in the 2008 financial crisis. And so there is no 100% security, in my opinion, when it comes to
Yep.
investment. I think one good note to look at if you're going to invest, you have to somewhat be comfortable. And it's very tough to say this, but what if you lose all the money? Can you still be able to, if you're
Mm-hmm.
providing for your family stuff? It's a big risk. Like, will it destroy you and you have nothing? Maybe it's not worth playing the
Yeah.
investment market until you generate some income. I know some people say, well, look at all the people who made money off of crypto and stuff. Yeah, but look how many people lost money too. I'm just using that for
Yeah.
example, like crypto, like when it comes to the meme coins, I'm not saying Bitcoin people have made money and lost money, but overall, it all depends. Like, for example, if you look at London, UK, it's a huge international hub. I would say
Yep.
London's the closest to New York, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's so many ways to answer that. Just like you answered, that was a great, eloquent answer. I think that, by the way, I should mention this is Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. I'm Kenneth French with vastsolutionsgroup.com. But, what I would say is, as I mentioned earlier a little bit, diversification isn't a bad thing. It helps with your, overall asset allocation, if you have some diversification in another country, companies that are outside the U.S. Plus, it really potentially could lower your overall risk profile because you are diversifying, but you have to run the numbers and ask your investment advisor or do the research yourself as an investor if it makes sense. Because this is, by the way, just for educational purposes only. You should talk to your own advisor. But what I would say is, in a lot of cases, surprisingly, just like you were saying, if the market goes down, let's say in the United States, and internationally you're in a good allocation with whatever, I don't know, I'm making this up, London or Japan markets, and that goes up, it could potentially help your portfolio on the downside and also on the upside. I think every situation is very unique, but I think having at least some allocation international makes a lot of sense. Your answer was awesome. So let me ask a couple more questions. I love picking brains, especially when I have you a big time international investment guy or global investment guy. So what are kind of in general markets you believe make sense? Japan as an example, I'm not going to hold you to it, or the UK, et cetera. What are some markets you think have a good flavor right now?
I think UAE, definitely with Dubai, due to the taxes we see, there's a huge influx of wealthy individuals coming from UK, plus the weather. And you also have to look at other things, security, family security, and stuff like that. Saudi Arabia is definitely a good market to invest in, hence the Saudi Vision 2030. Also, in relation,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to host a World Cup, which is a big event. So there's going to be some good opportunities there. America always,
Wow.
in my opinion. The reason why I think America is still very strong, despite some people might not agree, hence innovation. You look at Silicon Valley, the big banks, New York,
Mm-hmm.
and America is still a global powerhouse. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say Scandinavia seems to be doing quite well always. They're pretty,
Mm.
their pension funds invest a lot into venture capital funds and private equity funds. And I would say the
Mm.
Scandinavian just doing good. Like Norway has a lot of oil. China, I think, is still
Yep.
strong. I think China is, but obviously there's a
Mm.
lot of risk there. If you're going to go into China, you have to have a local partner there, in my opinion. You have to know anywhere you
Yep.
invest in. I think you should do your research, secondary or primary. I think you should actually visit the country first, even if it's like a
Yep.
few days, get a feeling for it, because nowhere is the same. Just look how big America is. There's a difference between the West Coast to the Midwest to the East Coast to the South, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Africa, I think, is always going to be good for commodities, hence lithium, uranium. Lithium is going to be more and more needed, especially with these electric vehicles. I would
Mm-hmm.
say, hopefully, when the war ends in Ukraine, there's going to be a lot of opportunity there too. We like it or not, a lot of wars are
Yep.
economic, and they were big into grain. I remember when the war started, there's a big issues in terms of Africa because 80% of Africa's wheat comes from Ukraine and Russian area. So that's a big,
Mm-hmm.
and I would also say, obviously chemicals and stuff like that. So everywhere in the world, there's some good reasons to invest in. Also, when you look into South America, I think what's going on in Argentina, they really decreased their
Mm-hmm.
inflation. I think Argentina is going to bounce back. Interesting enough, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but back in 1913, if I'm not mistaken, Argentina was the richest country in the world. And look how, like, what
Mm-hmm.
happened in 100 years. What a difference. And correct me
Mm-hmm.
if you think I'm wrong. I think I read something, I think it was in late 50s or in the early 60s, Detroit was the richest city in the world because of the auto industry, something like that. And
Auto industry. Yeah. Oh.
so I think it depends where the innovation is coming out. But in today's world, there's opportunities everywhere. India, I would say India
There
too.
really are. Yeah. There really
India,
are a lot of opportunities. I think again, I think globally it makes a lot of sense for diversification purposes. What I would also say, kind of to dovetail what you said, because obviously we do tax artificial intelligence and help with finance and sometimes increasing net worth for usually entrepreneurs. But I think more and more people from the US are going global because they want to take advantage of tax treaties and tax strategies that would be availed to them. And Dubai as an example, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I do totally agree with you when you're saying that people should go let's say to buy and research some companies, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially if they're doing it for tax purposes. There's kind of a twofold element there. By the way, I should also remind people, if they do such a trip, it is deductible to their business. So just to remind all those entrepreneurs out there, there are some tax benefits for doing trips, especially if you're structuring them correctly. So now, what about where you are? It sounds like you are in a very specific market that actually can make some sense for some investors. Why don't you talk about that?
Do you mean in terms of Croatia or in terms of startup and AI world? Just to be specific.
I think Croatia or AI. Obviously, we're big proponents of AI. We've been doing AI for years, but I guess either one. Talk about AI. I would love that actually, and then also Croatia, because I'm reading more and more about Croatia making sense for investors as far as the U.S. allocation goes.
Okay, so for AI, definitely. I think we're still in the augmented AI stage. So to clarify, that means that there's still human interaction or human bias when developing these AI products because it's still not fully automated. And it's good in some ways, and AI is constantly being trained. So it doesn't fully think like a human, and there's several versions of AI, but the AI market definitely, I think, imagery AI when dealing with healthcare, if you're dealing with the radiology stuff. But I talked to a few individuals about this the past few weeks. I still think it's good to have human interaction and human insights. So I would say this,
Mhm.
you can't take AI point blank. You still need to have human insight. For example, if I'm dealing with a doctor, and I think most people, they dealt with radiology and imagery and stuff if they loved ones or someone, and you still want the doctor's opinion. Why? Because they have experience. AI does
Right.
not have experience. And let's be honest, empathy. We're all humans. When you think of it, you want to work with someone, yeah, someone have to you either have to respect them or like them. You're not going to deal with someone that you don't
Yep.
respect and dislike. That's very rare.
Mhm.
And I would say AI's take being more and more mainstream, but
Yep.
there's opportunities in AI too. Like I've dealt with developing AI models. I've dealt with auditing the data. They constantly need to be trained. So I think it's good to
Mhm.
know how to use AI, but don't take it point blank as the final answer. You always have to review what it gives to you. And I know there's been big issues with schooling and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, I think we know based on our experience, you could cheat your way or smooth talk your way to a certain point, but you have to prove it at the end of the day. That's my opinion. So
Mhm.
AI is definitely going to be more interesting. I think after AI, it's going to be quantum, but that's another
Ooh, look at
topic.
you! Yeah.
Yeah, quantum, I
Yeah,
think.
100%. I could go all day on that. Yeah, because we've been in AI since 2010. That's when we first started doing our research. We came out with our own model in 2018 called
Oh,
Einstein.
wow.
And what I will say, by the way, we're starting to make it public. Some of our AI tech. Now you can get free software using one of our platforms, and soon we're going to do some things with tax prep on our platform also. But what I would say is, I'm going to correct you at least to a certain extent. When you're saying overseeing, there, we're still at the point where you have to oversee the tech. We have with our engine, Einstein, it is possible to basically click a couple of different buttons and the AI model will do some of the work for you. Now, I know that's pretty unique, but I won't delve into that. But anyway, I also get your point that in general, it's not in the marketplace. We're pretty excited to be rolling that out. But what I would also say, though, is I do agree with you. There does, generally speaking, need to be human interaction because there's 14, or at least according to our research, 14% of the time AI is going to be wrong. It's going to be very hard going forward to get to 100% for whatever reason, because there's so much AI that's based on what's going on the internet, and some of the internet is based on AI. So you're always going to have what they call a sigma factor. So what I would also say to that, though, is the way to combat that down the road, maybe way down the road, would be quantum computing. I think that's the final frontier. I'm trying to do as much, I was into AI very early. I'm trying to do the same thing with quantum computing, because I think for small business owners, people are saying, I don't know about quantum computing. It's the answer for, big pharma, et cetera, et cetera. But I think small business owners are also going to benefit from quantum computing to a large extent. And I know a lot of people laugh at that, but just like people used to laugh at me about AI, it's also going to be big, meaning quantum computing helping a business owner. I'm positive of that. So that's awesome. You mentioned that, by the way. Love it.
No, I definitely
Um,
think.
yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. So, and then my second part of the question, as far as Croatia, I know it kind of dovetails a
Yeah.
little bit with AI, but why don't you go into Croatia? Because I've
Yeah.
read more than enough information about Croatia, and that's kind of a marketplace that it looks like it's really kind of the thing now.
So Croatia is really popular in terms of tourism. It's got a huge coast. Well, a big coast, not compared to the States, but it still has a nice coast. It has like over 1,000 islands, if I'm not mistaken. Agriculture, for sure. I would say a lot of Eastern Europe is good for agriculture because of soil. And people can
Yep.
say whatever they want about agriculture. We need to eat. It's a necessity. And I would also say natural resources in terms of water. And one big opportunity that I think that's really big, not just only Croatia, I would say emerging Europe, that includes Bulgaria all the way up to Poland, is infrastructure.
Hmm.
Infrastructure is a huge opportunity. So I think a lot of construction companies, if they deal with infrastructure, they can do a lot of business in these countries, hence with public transportation and stuff. And lastly, I would say there is a lot of entrepreneurs. The only problem is they don't have as much access to capital compared to the States. And
Right.
I think that's one huge difference that really helped America to continue to be a powerhouse is the access to capital. I know
Yeah.
some people will think negatively about startups and stuff, but look how many jobs have come out of VCs. There would be no Meta. Who knows if Amazon would it, because they got investments early. All these big Google and etc. Who knows what the world would look
Hmm.
like today? And
Yeah.
I know some people might say positive and negatives, but there's always been ups and downs in terms of every turning point in business and economics. Though I think if investors want to invest in these regions, there is a lot of opportunity because I developed a platform via my company, Chorus called Dodiris. There was over 6,000 global investors that
Yeah.
invested in emerging Europe, and that includes the Baltics from 2020 to present. And there's a lot of interesting tech. Like you look at one of the first focus AI companies that went public was out of Romania. They had to move
Hmm.
to the States, and there's been several other companies. And I would, another thing I would say is there is a lot of opportunities in sports investments too. For specifically, I'll
Hmm.
say for Croatia in terms of soccer, football, and there is basketball too, in a way. Just it's not as big as NBA. When comparing basketball, NBA is still number one
Yeah.
in my opinion. But at the end of the day, it all depends what a person wants to focus in. But there's risks too, wherever you go in the new market. But I think it just depends on what the investor wants to invest in. Because usually, and based on my experience working with investors, they like to invest in companies that they understand
Yeah.
or have someone experience in.
Yeah, that totally makes sense what you said. So, all right, let's get ready to close up shop. What's one thing we have not talked about? I love asking this question. What's one thing we have not talked about? Give me an answer in under a minute. That you think can add value to a investor in the United States who's maybe an entrepreneur and they're thinking about investing, outside the United States. What's one thing you would suggest that we have not already talked about?
One thing I think investors in the United States should look into if they're going to look internationally is what is missing in the States. That's
Mm,
important. I would say, for example, you look at Southeast Asia and China or India manufacturing. If you're going to look
yep.
into agriculture, is still pretty big in the States, but I would also look at cocoa, for example, coffee beans or whatever. It could be commodities down in South
Yeah.
America. It could be chemicals. So I think that's one thing that investors in the States, if they can look at companies that deal with that and open the market for them in the States, I think they could be get a very nice ROI.
Look at you. Nice. Daniel Nikic. Nice. Very nice answer. So, wait a minute. One last time. How does someone get a hold of you if they're interested in doing so?
Yeah, they can contact me via my personal website at DanielNikic.com, danielnikic.com, or check me out on LinkedIn, and I'm quite responsive. So feel free to
I
send
love
me.
it. I love it. Thank you, Daniel. And thanks to everyone who's been watching and listening to this. Hopefully, this has added value, learned a little bit about maybe even AI. Love that. And also, global perspective as far as investing internationally. If you are inclined, Daniel would be a good guy to talk to at a minimum. Once again, this is Ken French, Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Thanks, everybody.